All right, it is 5 o'clock and we'll call this meeting to order. Thanks everyone for being here early for our special board meeting, August 26th, 2024. Is this working? My combination. All right, let's start with roll call.
Amy Riddle Swanson.
Here.
Abe Smith.
Here.
Dominique Stewart. Here. Rachel Henderson.
Here.
Dale Dalkey.
Here.
Amber Kirsting. Emily Hines.
Here.
Michelle Dupree.
Here.
Angela Wall.
Here. All right, and I heard from Amber just a little bit ago. She's on her way, but she was anticipating being she anticipated being maybe a couple minutes late. All right, we have a quorum. Any revisions to the agenda order tonight? All right, seeing none. First up, we have the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion by Michelle, second by Dale. Discussion on the consent agenda. We have several cooperative agreements for special education services with neighboring school districts, and I understand these are exactly the same as we've had.
Yeah, Tony, do you have any comments on these?
No, those are very standard what we've had in past years. Very good year.
Any questions or discussion from the board? Seeing none, let's vote.
I'm having trouble thinking of board members.
Okay.
Megan, voice vote. Oh, yes.
All right, motion passes 8-0. Wait a minute. All right, next up we have the personnel consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the personnel consent agenda.
I move to approve.
And second.
Okay, motion by Dale, second by Emily. We have one request to hire and one Wednesday resignation. We'll be saying goodbye to our business director. Any questions or discussion? I'm pretty sure it's still the case that if we vote no, she's still taking it. All right, seeing none, let's vote.
Yes.
Right, motion passes. On the action agenda, our first item is to approve district goals and major activities for 2024-2025. I'll entertain a motion to approve work plan. Motion by Abe, second by Angela. Any discussion? Folks, just so board members know, there were a couple of updates and corrections today. So make sure you're looking at the most recent version in board docs.
You want me to cover that real quick?
Sure, yeah.
Are they
So-
highlighted?
No, they're not highlighted, but I'll highlight it for you right now. First of all, in pillar 1, with the multi-level systems of support, we added some language in there to not only continue to improve our systems, but also how those systems are shared. So we added some language with that. And then the other ones were mostly just grammatical updates. Directors or board members, was there anything else that you wanted to point out? I think that was it.
Any questions or discussion on those updates or the major goals and activities as a whole? Apart from what Joe just mentioned, these are basically what we discussed 2 weeks ago. All right, seeing none, let's vote. Amber, if you need to do a voice vote, that is just fine. And the motion before us is approving the district goals and major activities.
I'm just looking for
All right, motion passes. Oh, and then, sorry, next up we have approvals to an updated 2024-25 staffing plan. I'll entertain a motion to approve these updates.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Dominique, second by Amber. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. First, I'll have Brian just talk about the 4K edition, and then I'll bring Mike Kennedy into discussion for kindergarten. So Brian, 4K, could you just summarize, please?
Yep. So our 4K programming, specifically at River Heights Elementary, our morning session that we have, we continue to receive enrollments in that program, getting us to the point where we feel the addition of a half-time paraeducator is necessary. Once we get over 14 students in our community sites, we start to look at the requirement of an additional adult in the room. Within the district, we tend to look at that, and then once we get above 17, is really when we start to look at that. We're currently sitting at a projected section between 20 and 22. I think right now, as of this morning, we're at 21 students that we have enrolled in that section with a max at 22. So asking for the additional half-time position there, which would be in alignment with what we have in the half-time.
And then the kindergarten position, between Tonya and Mike and myself, well, the entire lead team really, we've been tracking enrollment since the projection started last spring, throughout the summer. And actually, I haven't had a chance to talk to Mike today. Last I knew, we were at 52 kindergartners for River Heights. Has that changed at all?
We bumped up to 54 at the end of last week.
Okay, perfect. So when we were at 52, that was going to be 26 in two sections. We were going to try to reduce from 3 to 2 sections. But right at 52, that's 26 apiece. That's at the top end of our class size goals. So we had brought this forward even when it was 52. Well, now we're looking at 54. So we absolutely feel this is the right thing to do. We had posted the position, interviewed for the position. We have someone on board and ready to go. We just wanted approval by the board to make it official. So we'll go from 2 sections to 3. That puts those sections at what, Mike? 18. All 3 of them made 18, which also gives us a little room to grow without having to worry about having a big problem. Yeah, what's up?
Brian?
Yes.
What's the afternoon numbers look like, do you know?
I would have to look to see exactly where that is at. Our afternoon at River Heights, however, is our fully integrated program with early childhood special education as well, where we will have traditionally some higher needs students in that classroom in an inclusive environment, and with the goal of that being a co-taught class.
Any other questions or discussion on the updates to the staffing plan? Okay, seeing none, let's vote.
That's a yes.
All right, motion passes. All right, we have 2 discussion items. Oh, 1 discussion item, I guess, up next. We have the first reading of revisions to policy 834, motor vehicles on school grounds. And folks will notice we have a link to the policy as it exists. And then in board docs, the proposed updates to the policy, and also the change ordinance that was adopted by the city this summer, along with the ATV and UTV routes. Do you want to say anything about the need for this change, or?
Sure. So, like several communities in northern Wisconsin, the city of Menomonie has adopted an ordinance to allow for ATVs and UTVs in some areas of the city on city streets. Not the entire city. The map is in your background. But it's pretty clear that our school district is going to have to answer the question about whether or not ATVs and UTVs will be allowed in school grounds. And seeing that they're being treated like other vehicles in most of the city and in the proximity related to our schools, we feel it's best to go ahead and adopt the same procedure that we would have for other motor vehicles. This also provides us with an opportunity to expand our policy just a little bit and kind of reinforce the idea that any motorized vehicles are not to be off of the paved areas without authorization. So, there's different ways to look at this. My biggest concern would be are underage children going to be driving these things? I was reassured by City Administrator Atkinson that the motorist vehicle laws, being 16 years old, having a license, all apply to the city ordinance. So I guess I don't see a reason not to allow UTVs and ATVs to be treated like other motorized vehicles. Any direction or questions that the board might have on this?
I have a question about, so I read the city ordinance. I know there's a lot of discussion in the city about, pros and cons to the original ordinance, but now it's here. I think it is noteworthy that, item 10 of the city ordinance says they must have a valid operator's license, being a car and a driver's license, and have to have, additionally, an ATV, UTV safety certification from the DNR. And if they're under 18, must be wearing a helmet. And I think, but that involuntary response, I think, comes to one of my questions, which is, to what extent would, the student service officers that we have be involved in kind of, policing those sorts of behaviors? I mean, my understanding is that, city police and DNR can give tickets for lack of helmet and things like that. Is that going to be, something that would be a lesson about safety, or on the other hand, would it be a burden on staff involved in, the schools to be factoring in these extra factors?
And maybe Mr. Drake could speak a little bit about the YSOs. I mean, certainly if a kid is out in the parking lot doing donuts or, doing something like that, the YSO is going to address that. And I do know our YSOs provide some additional supervision around beginning and end of the school day. I don't necessarily think they're sitting there with a notebook, though, looking for every possible violation. Casey, is there anything you want to add on how you would expect the YSOs to handle this?
So I would say the number one concern is always like how they drive. So certainly if we get reports about students driving their vehicles or now like UTVs or something like that in an unsafe manner, that's something that gets reported pretty quickly, and our YSO will follow up on that immediately. In terms of like checking license, we don't check the license of every kid that drives a car into our parking lot, of course. I mean, I'm assuming they have a license, but unless there's an issue that isn't really around we go. So I would assume we'd follow probably a similar process with that. However, again, I think the safety of that parking lot is a big deal for us, and we'll have to have a conversation. Now that this is passed, we'll have to have a conversation with the YSO just about any recommendations he may have in terms of areas to park or to drive, or if there's anything else that we might want to change with our lot, I guess.
Yeah, and I think in the city discussion, there's a lot of discussion about kind of the education aspect of it. Obviously, safe driving matters no matter what vehicle you're in. And one thing I think that some people had a misinterpretation about it, and that was being discussed at sea level, is that, of course, on trails, I think you can be 12 if you have a DNR certification. And so there might be people who think, I can drive at 13 with a middle school or whatever. No, this is not going to be allowed. But also, that becomes an education side of that. So I think if this goes through and the district decides to go ahead with this, or we do as a board, then I think it is worth thinking about if there can be a bit of kind of onboarding and really thorough education, because it's quite possible there'll be a whole bunch of kids who, they've got an ATV, they know how to use it on trails, they're confident driving it, hey, I can drive to school, right? But hey, they're 14, they don't have a helmet, and there's all kinds of things going on there, so.
Yeah. And I do think that this is something we'll have to continue to revisit administratively for sure, and then if the policy would need to be changed, we would bring it to the board for consideration. This is only a first reading. So by the time this comes back to the board, school will have started. We may know more then. My biggest concern, other than the obvious of the health and safety of our kids, would also be the facilities. And will people be more apt to off-road a UTV or ATV? Perhaps. But like even today, we had a sophomore football game at the high school campus here at 10 a.m. because of the extreme heat. And I know it was hot, I know people don't like walking, but there were people parking in the grass areas over there by the sports complex. And if we start seeing problems like that, whether it be students, I can't imagine staff, but even the public, then maybe we would have to post some other regulations and some other expectations. But I do think it's worth, seeing that the city is doing this. We don't want to be in the policing vehicles that are beyond what the city is expecting. Then we're also taking that responsibility to enforce those regulations. So at this point, I think this is the wisest thing to do.
And to be clear, sort of my reading of our proposed policy changes, what it seems to do is it really does empower the schools and the administration to treat UTVs like any other vehicle. And so if kids are, making unsafe choices, you have a policy to point to. It's like, look, you have to act in this UTV the same way you would act in a car. It's basically what we're looking at right now.
Yeah, I think we're addressing the ordinance without providing any additional prohibition or regulation than what's already expected for other motor vehicles.
When you mentioned people parking in the grass this morning, were those on just cars or were they ATVs or both?
No ATVs.
Just cars.
I haven't seen ATVs yet. Actually, the city ordinance doesn't go into effect until October.
Oh, is that right?
So we're trying to be a little proactive by bringing this forward for discussion tonight. We would like to have action in September so that come October 1st, we have a clear policy in place before it goes into effect with the city.
I think there's people in town who don't know it hasn't gone into effect.
That's a law enforcement issue, not a school issue.
Not our, no, it's all good.
I have one little question for Casey. I'm curious, and maybe you don't have an answer, but I'm curious if you've, in the last, say, 3 or 4 years, if you've seen changes of behavior of like off-roading with the rise of like e-bikes, right? Like let's go with off-road e-bikes now. They can go 40 miles an hour, right? Are people like bombing through the fields or no? Okay.
Not the high school, no. I mean, we just have our typical vehicles in the parking lot. Occasionally we get a tractor that shows up in the morning, and that's about it.
So as Joe just mentioned, this is our first reading. This will come back to us in September, and be something that we continue to watch. Any additional discussion or questions? Okay. And then lastly, we have items related to next meeting dates, board committees, and reports. Did you guys know the meet and greet day is tomorrow? First day with busing Wednesday. There's no school on Monday, September 2nd. That's Labor Day. We have our regular school board meeting September 9th. And then please take note, board members, our committee meetings will start. And hopefully everyone remembers what committees they signed up for back in April or May. But if you have questions, you can reach out to me or to Jenny probably or to Joe. The Health and Medical Committee will meet September 19th. Homecoming is September 20th. The Quality Improvement Committee meets October 7th. And then coming up at the end of October, there's more dates in there, I'm not going to read them all, but just a quick note that the WASB regional meeting is at the Off-Broadway Banquet Center, also known as Stout Ale House, on October 23rd. And I haven't seen an email for registering for that, but for folks who are new to the board, that is something that if you'd like to register for it, you can contact Jenny once the registration opens. You can contact her now, but she can't do anything about it probably. But you'll start to get email directly from WASB about that. Any questions about upcoming meeting dates, board committees, and reports?
Rachel, since we have a couple minutes, and
Yeah.
we went pretty quick, and
Oh, sorry.
we wanted to build a big enough buffer, I would like to circle back to the start of school just for a couple minutes here. First of all, we had a terrific staff in service that began last week. We had a keynote speaker that talked about the different generations working in our school district, and then also that we partner with, whether it be our students, our families, our community. And from all the conversations that I've had and the emails I've received from staff members, it's been very, very positive. People felt it was worthwhile. We also were trying to be selective in not providing something that was going to put a whole bunch more on people's plates as the school year starts. With Act 20 and all the extra training having to do with Wisconsin reading law, there's already a lot of extra work, especially for our early elementary teachers. But I still think it was very valuable. And even simple things like how we send text messages and how we email each other. The speaker was talking about a certain generation, and I looked at my phone and I was next to Brian, and we both started chuckling because it was spot on. But it also is clear that some of the generational differences can lead to miscommunication. And I know communication is one of our goals for this school year, improving the communication. And I think that really aligned well with those goals. So, and I also wanted to thank the board members who attended the new teacher luncheon last week. That was great to have board representation there. Rachel came to our opening in-service and provided a few notes of encouragement, or a few words of encouragement to our staff, and the other board members too that were able to attend some of those things. I think that's really important for our staff to see that support from the board, and it's much appreciated. So, like Rachel said, we have our check-in day tomorrow, also freshman first day, and then buses start. And we've had a number of questions, I think they've all been answered, about these first few days. Classes do start. So, if anybody's watching or anybody's talking, I would highly encourage everyone to send their children to school this week because they will be behind if they don't attend. So, we're looking forward to it. First home football game. We've already had a number of events. Home swimming meet on Saturday. The first home football game, which was usually our largest attended event, is going to be Thursday night at Williams Stadium, 7 o'clock against Marshfield. I'm sure we'll have a nice crowd. So we're off and running, and appreciate all the work of the administrators, the staff members, Jenny, and everyone who's had a hand in getting us started for the school year.
Any additional thoughts or questions before we adjourn our special board meeting and prepare for our annual meeting? We do have plenty of time. All right, if not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So,
Second.
All right, motion made, second by Dominique, we stand adjourned. Thank you.